Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Bill Hannafin. I'm the managing editor of the Wise Marketer, and I'm really pleased to welcome you back to the CRMC webinar series, today featuring Sally Beauty and Tinyclues. Today's webinar is beautifully constructed and elegantly delivered, or so it will be. And yes, I can't resist a few puns along the way, so that was my attempt at humor today. But today's topic is a customer-centric strategy at scale using machine learning. With over 5,000 stores worldwide and over 8,000 professional beauty products, Sally Beauty has a lot to share with its customers. But the continual challenge, as you might imagine, is how to consistently stimulate engagement and drive repeat store visits. The answer can be found in the way Sally Beauty delivers the right content to the right customer across such a large customer group. And the story that you'll hear today describes how Sally Beauty's CRM team powered its first-party customer data in partnership with Tinyclues to transform its CRM and its email marketing strategy. So I'm very interested to learn more about how Sally incorporated machine learning into its marketing execution. Machine learning is a term that's tossed around quite a bit, isn't it? And I think it's really important to be able to hear from retailers that are putting machine learning to use in practice, and from people like Tinyclues who are expert at making that happen. So I believe also that we'll all benefit from learning about how to keep your email communications vibrant and effective. Email continues to be a really core communication channel preferred by many customers, and today's presenters have an impactful story to tell you on that subject. So today's presenters are Gabrielle Trujillo and Ashley Lively. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in. But thanks for joining us. So Gabrielle is Vice President of CRM, Customer Analytics, and Research at Sally Beauty. He's a senior leader in marketing, loyalty, and CRM with over 20 years of consistently delivering high-quality content. Throughout his career, with several widely recognized retail brands, he has masterminded forward-thinking approaches to marketing and is well-versed in tracking market trends and capitalizing on opportunities. Gabrielle knows the importance of building relationships, as evidenced by one of his favorite sayings that I noticed in his profile. It's from Theodore Roosevelt, and it is, the most important single ingredient in the formula of success is knowing how to get along with people. That's a powerful one. I love that. Ashley Lively is Senior Customer Success Manager at Tinyclues. She has a tremendous experience in building success for her clients. She's worked with some great brands, including Tiffany's, and we've learned that she's an experienced cycling instructor, so she clearly knows how to make the wheels turn for her clients. All right. Can't resist. I just can't resist. So
hopefully you're getting some good laughs on the other side, Bill.
I hope so. We'll get questions to either please stop or share more. So we'll find out in a little while. But before we get started, I just want to share a couple of housekeeping tips with you. We want to keep everything really brisk and engaging, fun. So our presenters are going to share for 30 minutes plus. We'll see how it goes. It depends on the conversation. We'll have 10 minutes or so of Q&A. So we'll attempt to keep this concise but fun, as I said, and give you a little bit of time to transition to wherever you need to be at the top of the next hour. We have a pretty large audience today, and we want to make sure that everybody can participate and that everybody's really well served, that this is a great use of your time. So we've got a team of people that are curating questions that you can drop in during the conversation, and we'll bring those questions up and get them answered from Gabrielle and from Ashley at the end of the talk. The ones that we can't get to, we will direct to our presenters today, and then we'll give them an opportunity to connect with you and respond to your questions after the event. So don't worry if your question isn't answered in live time. The one thing I want to mention too is you'll notice, if you're familiar with the format that we're using today, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. There's also a chat button. Please drop your questions in the Q&A. That's the place to put those. That'll just make it all easier on everyone. And then if you have anything of a technical nature, any connection issues, or just other questions, interested in any of the CRMC webinars in the series, drop a message in chat and we'll get back to you there. So really enough of me and enough of my puns and corny humor, and I'd like to turn it over to Ashley. Let's get started. I can't wait to hear the conversation. So welcome again.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks so much for
Thank you.
having us. We're very happy to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because we actually have some visuals that we'd like to share today. So you can see a big old Sally Beauty logo. Yep, awesome.
Good.
So Gabriel and I are super happy to be here. Gabriel, I'm speaking for you, but I know that's true. Today we're going to be talking about how Sally Beauty built a customer-centric strategy at scale, leveraging machine learning, but more than just the how, we're also going to talk about the why. We have some visuals to help propel the discussion and to hopefully get you engaged and thinking along the way also. And again, we're going to be discussing more of the why as opposed to the how it happened, but and we want to share why we want to share this story and why we believe it's important for CRM marketers. So to kick off the story, Gabriel's going to share about some context so you understand how we got started in our journey.
Absolutely. And good afternoon. Great to be here. Thank you, Bill, for the introduction, and love the jokes. But yes, it's as Ashley mentioned, it's good to share our experience. It's a positive one. Great experience, great results, as we'll share in a minute. And welcome any questions, as Bill mentioned. So look forward to an interactive conversation here. So let's kick it off. So Sally Beauty, as with most retailers, we have multiple channels that we're trying to engage our customers with, SMS, direct mail, call campaigns, email, paid, you name it. And what we're looking for is obviously to provide the best experience, the best relevant messages across the right channel at the right time. I mean, that's kind of CRM 101. We go on to the next slide. We wanted to elevate this experience and the relevancy. We have an analytics team internally. We are creating, predictive models, engagement scores, etc. But we wanted to test AI, this kind of AI machine learning that we all hear about. And we connected with Tinyclues. We've been working with Tinyclues for a couple of years now, and we opted to pick one of our most engaging, let's say, complex channels. So we started with email. Large scope, lots of emails, lots of contacts, notable emailable days. So we thought it would be good to start off with email and just see what AI can deliver through email.
Yes, and Gabriel, to add on that, one of the other things, and just thinking back to when we started the partnership, is email was the channel that's frequently chosen from what we see, but also I think that from our discussions is because the volume, there's so much volume that it's easy to test and get significant results. So that was another reason why the partnership began that way, right?
Yeah, I think what you said, testing is key. And again, as I mentioned, we have an internal analytics team. So we before we fully sign up for something, we like to test things several different ways. So we put AI to the test. We put Tinyclues to the test. As you mentioned, email is an easy channel to test in. And we tested for, 8 months, 9 months, a lot of emails, dozens, if not hundreds of email iterations on the Tinyclues approach, our internal approach, and understanding what targeting really delivered higher engagement, but ultimately conversion and revenue across channels. So email was kind of a good channel to start our engagement with. Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. And then the other thing to note is just that while we're talking about email today, because that's our story and that's our partnership so far, is that machine learning can be applied to other channels, right? So we're going to talk about email today and why we believe machine learning is so important, but it can be applied to other channels. So let's get going into kind of what we wanted to share today, which is if you walk away from this webinar with anything, we want you to also be thinking about why machine learning might be important for you to consider if you're in CRM marketing or just in marketing in general. And so that's kind of the premise of today's conversation and what we wanted to share at CRMC even at the event. So this is similar to what our discussion at CRMC was, but hopefully a lot more colorful because Gabriel is able to join us live today. So the whole discussion, the whole concept of why machine learning is so important kind of started actually last year when Tinyclues did a State of CRM report. And we interviewed a lot of different CRM professionals. Gabriel, I think you were one of them. And
But
yeah, and the overwhelming response that we got was that when we asked CRM professionals, what was your goal for 2021? Because right, it was last year. The number one response was, our goal for 2021 is to be more customer centric. And it was like this exact phrase that we were seeing is to be more customer centric. CRM teams want to be more customer centric. And I think it's safe to say, based on the response that we saw at CRMC, based on what I'm hearing from other people right now, is this is still one of the like main stated objectives CRM teams are after, to be more customer centric. And if you're in CRMC and if you're tuned into this webinar today, I'm pretty sure I probably don't need to tell you what customer centricity is. I don't want to talk about what it is. I want to talk about why we want to be more customer centric. So if the definition of being customer centric is to keep the customer at the center of everything we do, at the center of every decision, why is that so important? That's important because theoretically, if the customer is at the center of every decision, then every decision being made along the way to that interaction with the brand or to the event or purchase or whatever that might be that the customer has with the brand, if every decision leading up to that event is with the customer at the forefront, then technically that experience should feel relevant to the customer. So this is why customer centricity is so important to CRM teams. But I personally, I mean, I was part of the team building the report, and I personally was a little bit shocked to see so many teams saying like, oh, I want to be more customer centric, because I felt like, well, man, I know that we're working really hard to be customer centric, and we want to be more customer centric. And what's going on? It's so strange because we have more data than we've ever had. We have more tools to be more personalized than we've ever had before, yet teams still are kind of feeling like, I'm not quite there yet. I haven't reached that perfectly relevant experience for my customers. But the interesting thing is that I also know it's not just CRM teams that feel that way. Forrester Thought and Thought Leadership and Research paper, they reported that 70% of the consumers they interviewed for their paper also said that the ads that they're seeing don't feel relevant to them. So 70% of consumers also feel like what they're seeing isn't relevant to them. And so the question is, what gives? Like, we're in this paradox of we have a lot of information, we have a lot of data, we have more tools than we've had before, and we want to be more customer centric, yet we're just not delivering that relevant experience yet. And when I say we have a lot of data, I'm talking about we have a lot of data. I mean, I personally, with last year in the pandemic and even right now, I mean, buying online, I know I'm giving all of the data points that are popping up on your screen right now. I have given this information like dozens of times, sometimes to the same brand. And so for me as a consumer, but for me as someone in CRM, these fields look very familiar because this is all the types of information we're receiving. And yet, you know, we have all these data points, we have all this information, and yet we're still feeling like, I'm not quite customer centric. But I want to say it's not because we aren't trying, right? Like, I know it's not because CRM teams aren't there. I know they're sitting together, huddled every day saying, what can we do today in order to become more relevant tomorrow for our customers? And I know it's not because teams don't want to. I also know some teams are probably feeling like, you know what, I actually already am customer centric. I do have some strategies in place that deliver a more relevant experience. And absolutely things like opt-in preferences or dynamically personalized content in messages or segmentation or any of these strategies do deliver a more customer centric strategy. But the thing that's missing from this equation is it's not leveraging all of the data that we have available. And when I say all of the data, I'm talking about a lot of data. I'm not just talking about Sally Beauty. I'm talking about even smaller brands that don't have, you know, hundreds of millions of customers, but they have maybe thousands of customers, and that's still a lot of data. I speak for myself, from my own personal experience, Bill mentioned I teach cycling, and I had a fitness business before I became a CRM manager and before I became a customer success manager at Tinyclues. This fitness business started with one customer, and then it slowly grew over years to thousands of customers. But even with 1,000 customers or thousands of customers, that was still a lot of data for me. So I realized that the people tuned in today are probably with organizations that have 1 million customers or 1 million customers or even millions of customers. And so when we talk about leveraging all of the data that we have for millions of customers, we start to see how complex that strategy or how complex that process is going to get. And I really like to give the example of when I had my fitness business, I started with one customer, and it was really easy to be customer centric when you have one customer. And you can talk to that person, you can ask them questions, you can learn what their behavior is like, how they respond to things, what they enjoy, what they didn't enjoy, and you can tailor your behavior to adjust for what you've learned from that one person. And that's even easy with 10 people or 100 people. But again, when I got to thousands of people, I started getting to this issue of scaling that customer-centric strategy or that customer-centric interaction with my customers. And so, Gabriel, I know that 1,000 customers are not what we're talking about for you. But I also know that other people are thinking the same thing. Like, yeah, being customer-centric with one person is super, achievable. But when I'm talking about millions of people, I start to run into some issues. And so this is where machine learning comes into place, right? This is where the topic of machine learning comes into that conversation of having all of that data, having millions of customers, needing to scale a customer-centric strategy, but how do you have enough resources to do it? And typically teams, what they run into are they just quite simply don't have enough resources. Maybe the bandwidth on their team's not large enough. Maybe they don't have the right type of people in their team in order to process all of this data, to mine all of the data in order to generate actionable insights. But actually, there's an even more simple answer to why it's so hard to make use of all of that data. And the really simple answer is that humans are extremely complex beings. The way we think is extremely complex. We don't have a series of rules that we make throughout our day that determine the way our behavior is. We have a thought process that is incredibly complex. And so what machine learning is, I want to give you a very, very simple definition, not because I don't think that you can understand a more complex one, but because I personally found, before working at Tinyclues, I personally found machine learning to be intimidating, the concept of machine learning to be intimidating. And so I hope that for those of you who maybe have a deep understanding of machine learning, I can give you a simple definition. And for those of you who maybe find it a little bit like, I'm not sure what to do with that information or what to do with that word, those words, you have an accessible definition. So what machine learning is very simply a computer takes data on past events. So it absorbs the data on past events in order to learn on it, but it doesn't do it with rules. It just learns without rules. So it's not programmed with rules in order to predict new events. So it takes old events, learns on it, and then predicts new events. And all of this is done without rules. And so that probably sounds pretty similar to what I just said, which is humans are complex. We don't have rules that dictate what we do. Rather, we have a process of learning in order to make interpretations or decisions or predictions. And that is what machine learning is. It's an imitation of the way we as humans learn also. I have an example that I shared at CRMC because I recently purchased a car. Gabriel, are you a car person? Do you know a lot about cars?
Wouldn't say I'm an expert, but yes.
Okay.
I am a fan of cars, yes.
Okay, so I asked that because before I purchased the car, I knew nothing about cars, like nothing. I could see a car and tell you if I liked it, but I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, like what kind of car that is, nothing. But so I give this example because if we look at these images, we can all be like, okay, there are 3 cars there. some of us who have absorbed a lot of information, so I would consider myself a pretty informed car consumer now after the last year of doing a whole bunch of research. Now I could like easily tell you the make and model of these cars. But there are some people who have actually absorbed so much information that they can look at these images and be like, I know the make, model, year, the color blue, the type of tires, the headlight, the interior, on and on and on. And all of that is because they've ingested a whole bunch of information, learned on it over years, and now they're able to see something and interpret what it is. And so again, our neural networks, the way we process information is not rule-based, and that's the same concept of machine learning. And so that's what machine learning is. And so hopefully now it's kind of clicking as to why it could be useful applied to a plethora of data. And what Gabriel is going to talk about, what he's going to share with you, is a story of how Sally Beauty was able to solve that paradox of having a ton of data, needing to process, wanting to make use of all of it, and leveraging machine learning in order to do it. Gabriel?
Absolutely. No, thanks for that, Ashley. And again, it's finding simple ways, data-driven simple ways to be able to scale what we do. We have a ton of products. My merchandising friends keep on, innovating, creating, launching products. So it's pretty exciting. But over 10,000 plus SKUs, large footprint of stores, growing e-com channel, growing sales, and we have a lot of data. Trust me, I'm one of those data hoarders that you described, Ashley. I love data, but obviously we need to put that data into good use and make it actionable, meaningful. What are we going to do with this information? And not just let it sit in a warehouse or a database. How do we connect the dots? How do we leverage technology? We have multiple different, technology partners. How do we integrate? And at the end of the day, how do we drive all of the technology, all of this data to tell a meaningful story to our customer? And we're pushing our data analytics team every day, creating new predictive models and so on. But we thought, what can Tinyclues do for us, as I mentioned earlier, and how do we put this to the test? So we've been testing for several months, and if we go to the next slide, our goal for this test is pretty straightforward. How do we drive more engagement? Again, we picked email, but not just driving open rates and click-through rates, but how do we drive measurable traffic, revenue to both our site and our stores? How do we get concrete numbers that we can tie to our database and really prove out that this is working? And how do we put this to the test? Again, we try to, with all the respect, debunk, the AI model. We're like, oh no, we can beat this, and we pushed the analytics team as much as we could. We tried different approaches, different targeting, and as Ashley simplified the approach, the machine learning engine outperformed us. Now we're still trying to improve how we target and how we improve on results, but we are seeing great performance, which we'll share in a minute. But long story short, it's not that we were not targeting. Obviously, I'm sure everybody here has a targeting segmentation based on historic performances. Customers bought this brand or this profile, or we have lookalike models and we have predictive models. But it is, how do we keep on pushing on that? We're always trying to improve performance. So we said, what, we're getting healthy performance, but how do we continue pushing it? So we had a lot of rules, a lot of, predictive models in place, a lot, again, talking about 10,000 plus different SKUs and hundreds of different brands. There's a lot of segmentation that takes place in our world. But we just wanted to scale it faster, drive more results, as I'm sure everybody is. So that's where we said, let's try AI and see where we get. And if we go to the next slide, one thing that caught our attention in the testing is how simple it was. So this is an example of a nails email. It's Nails Inc. Nails is one of our major categories. Within the Tinyclues dashboard, I'm going to call it, we literally didn't have to feed a lot of, scores or do much coding at all. It's a very simple to use tool where we basically said, the brand is Nails Inc., the category is nails. The dashboard literally did the rest, and produced an output that is basically a targeted audience who is likely to receive this email. What we started noticing is that it didn't necessarily produce a targeted audience based on whether a customer had purchased either the brand or the category before. So in our mind, like, hey, you're targeting customers that have never bought nails or have never purchased this brand. So we're like, okay, there's some type of lookalike pattern going here. So we did our lookalike models as well, and we put them to the test. But to our positive, surprise, the targeting that Tinyclues was coming up with was outperforming our internal targeting, and it was picking customers again who never bought nails. Some did buy nails, but it was a mix. It was across the spectrum, and the open rate, the engagement, the ultimate revenue for the targeted group was phenomenal. So very interesting, very intriguing, very easy, very simple to deploy and leverage. And we're doing this across, again, dozens of categories, dozens if not hundreds of brands on a day in and day out basis.
Gabriel, before I go to the next slide, I wanted to bring up something that I hear a lot of CRM teams talk about. I feel like I get asked, and I know that this is something that you find really interesting, which is the learning, being able to bring customers who have never purchased in nails before into the list or the recommended audience, right? And like how that's so important. It's kind of like, if someone has never purchased before, from our perspective, like as CRM marketers, we're like, oh, they probably are not going to be interested in nails, right? But this is the beauty of using machine learning or something that's imitating the way humans think, which is that it says, just because they haven't purchased, let's find people who look like those who are purchasing in nails right now and bring those people into the audience because they're relevant to this topic or this category. So I wanted to just highlight that because I think that's something that a lot of teams ask me, and maybe some people are thinking about, like, how does that happen exactly?
Yeah, no, Ashley, and just to add to that, we're always looking to grow our customers' basket. Customers who are buying care or color, can we get them into nails or vice versa? And I'm sure across any industry, those who shop multiple channels, multiple categories are generally higher value customers and spend more. So that is kind of one of the ultimate goals for CRM across pretty much every industry. And we, once we started identifying that the tool gave us an audience that had not purchased nails, but once we targeted them with nails or whatever category they started purchasing, we then started exploring, what else is there, what other opportunities are there, and started, getting more familiar with the tool. And we're still on the roadmap of learning and leveraging the tool even more. But there are options, that we're playing around with, where the tool actually identifies other segments and categories that we may not have, good marketing support. It might identify, hey, you're not talking about brand A in this category this week, but there's a target audience here that could leverage and is likely to buy that. And we're like, okay, you know what? We didn't have an email or, for that brand, for that category this week. We had it, 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now based on other data and other models. So we are actually adjusting our schedule depending, based on what we're learning from the AI, based on the opportunities that it's pointing out. So if there's an AI, recommendation for a brand or category earlier in the schedule, we are actually shifting our emails around and adjusting our schedule accordingly to basically take advantage of those opportunities. So we're still learning. It's a daily learning, but it's exciting to find those opportunities and those nuggets, which maybe in some other data and other models are not popping up to us.
Exactly. Yeah.
And again, not going to read too much here, but driving to what we all want to get to, driving relevancy, balancing the volume of customer content. So by knowing what customer is going to respond to what message, we can reduce the number of emails sent to a specific customer. So we don't have to target a customer with, email on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday based on our model. If the AI says, you know what, they only need an email on Tuesday, then that alleviates the number of emails sent that are maybe not as relevant. So we're also playing not just with the right message, but how many messages over time for a specific customer, and reducing, getting flat to positive results on less volume of email sent, which frees up the space to target those customers with either other messages or just let them, give them a breathing space. And again, the identifying the opportunities of products and categories. So a long, journey ahead of us and continuing to learn and drive results, but so far, it's going really well. And yes, triple digits. I was, joking around with my analytics team, and every time we see triple digits, we, first reaction is we don't believe it. It's fake. It can't be. Very rarely in my career have I seen triple digit lifts over a baseline. And don't get me wrong, we feel, based on what I know from the industry, we have a pretty healthy performing channel. So seeing lifts like this over baseline is, we tried to disprove it 10 different ways, and we couldn't. So that's where we're like, wow, this is really working. And we took, 1 email a week and 2 emails a week and 3 emails a week to now we're rolling up to basically every email, or 95% of our emails go through the AI machine learning engine with Tinyclues across 2 brands. I know we're talking Sally, but we also have a B2B side of the business, which is Cosmoprof. All those emails are also going through the tool. So, my analytics team is still trying to figure out how to match or improve upon these results. And hey, I challenge them every day to do so, but the results are there. And it's pretty simple, and it didn't really require more analysts. It didn't really require more data or different data. It didn't require us to restructure the data. I will say, we work with a lot of vendors, and it was a fairly simple connection with the Tinyclues environment. Ashley, has been a great help, and the whole Tinyclues team on ensuring that whatever state our data is in is workable, can be connected, can be analyzed, and can be provided back to us in an easy way so we can deploy it through our email platform. So
yeah. And that's actually
let's keep it going.
That's actually the beauty of machine learning, right? It's like the more data that it can receive or it can ingest or learn on, the better. So it's kind of like the more data you are able to share, then the stronger your learning becomes. And so that's kind of like, yeah, give us everything you've got, because we want to take it and deliver like the best output for you.
Absolutely. So again, we are providing more relevancy. It's easy to scale. We are ensuring that our customers get the right volume of emails. We're meeting and exceeding our goals. And in a pretty simple, easy process. Again, we are exploring other channels, which I fully think that we will expand outside of email, but more to come on that, maybe for a future chat.
Part 2.
But with that, I'll hand it back to you, Ashley.
Yes. I think, again, we said we wanted you to walk away from this discussion in this webinar thinking like, why should I consider machine learning? So the question we want to pose back to you all, and you don't have to answer, obviously, because I think might be difficult for everyone to put in the chat their answer, but is how are you making the most of all of the customer data you have? I mean, Sally Beauty is a great example of a team that has a lot of data to process and to work with. And their whole goal was like, let's make use of every single data point we have for every single customer. And at scale, that's a lot. And so we want to ask you, what are you doing? How are all the data points you've collected that you've worked so hard to collect and store? How are you making the most of it? And obviously it might be hard for you to do it today, but you can feel free to LinkedIn connect with us, share your story. If you'd like to set up a call, I'd be happy to chat with you and hear about how you're doing it or what you're doing. And I know Gabriel is always up for a good CRM chat. So please feel free to connect with us.
That is great. Thanks, Ashley. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Sorry, go ahead, Bill. I think you. do Q&A, so go for it.
I know you have you had another comment. Please go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm reading the Q&A. What are some of the most common platform softwares used for machine learning? I'll defer to you, Ashley, on any additional input or Bill. But for us, for Sally, the main one is Tinyclues. We are working with another one. Not going to share the name yet, but I can connect offline for our subject line testing. So I think, what we're seeing, at least in Sally, is that there's different vendors that are focused on targeting or content or messaging. I'm sure there's a lot of other platforms and softwares, but I can speak to one other. So internally right now, we're working with two. Tinyclues, the major one. The other one is for subject line testing and email.
Yeah, and I think the answer to that, I'm not going to list every single vendor that you know of. I think that the part of that question that I find really interesting is a lot of people, AI is a big buzzword. And when we talk about machine learning, something I didn't mention is that machine learning is a subset of AI. So when you hear maybe someone say AI in place of machine learning, it's not wrong because it's a type of AI. But the important thing to note when you're considering vendors is understanding the type of AI that they're offering you. There are different types. And so machine learning specifically is ingesting old events in order to predict new events without rules, without being programmed. And that's people ask, what's the secret sauce? That is a secret sauce. No rules, not letting rules dictate how that prediction is coming out to you. So I hope that's helpful when you're considering how to use machine learning, and then also not getting caught in the trap of like, this is AI, but what kind of AI it is.
Ashley, since you mentioned that, there was another question here asking about that exactly, about the without rules, that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Just asking about although there may not be rules, there certainly must be some level of programming or definition according to goals or parameters or selection across a database. So where do you draw the line between that sort of configuration and, quote, setting up rules?
So first of all, I will just preface with, I am there. We have a whole team of data engineers and data scientists. We have 5 PhDs at Tinyclues that would love to have a really in-depth conversation about how the algorithm works. Okay. And what all the things are. But what I can very simply tell you is that, so first of all, there's certain types of data that are very important for the learning for Tinyclues. So there's specific tables that are needed related to transactions and your products and any type of customer behavior you have available. Those types of information are really important to informing the learning. And then something really interesting about machine learning. So what I said is you're learning on old events to predict new events. Those events could be like an engagement, like a click, or it could be like a conversion. Whatever your goal is that's trackable, that's the type of an event that you're setting up to learn on. And then as far as parameters go, there needs to be enough information, there needs to be enough data available in order to actually learn on. So there are some minimums that are required in order for machine learning to work. But yeah, so that's a very simple answer. If you're someone who wants no, I need how the algorithm works, the type of modeling, the type of lookalike modeling that's going on. We'd love to chat, but I'd bring in some backup sources to speak for it.
Right. So there's kind of a related, that's really good. And obviously Sally is a perfect client because they certainly have enough data to make,
yeah.
Right.
That was not even a question, but yeah.
That's right. So there was a question kind of related to Tinyclues and the role you play. Are you informing the audience? Are you driving dynamic content? Exactly. How do you fit into the value chain, call it, for customer engagement?
The way we like to say it, and Gabriel, maybe if this feels right, you could confirm it, but the way we like to say it is that we're an added layer of intelligence to your stack. So we're not replacing your trigger programs or, all of the things that you're already doing to be customer centric. We're meant to be an added layer to make the most of all of your data. So that's how we see ourselves fitting in. I think that's how most people would explain us fitting into their stack also.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
And if I may add, as I read the questions as well, just to maybe get into a little bit more detail. To answer directly, Tinyclues is providing us with target audiences. We do dynamic content through other platforms, other systems, but Tinyclues basically provides us who the main, when we have a brand, a product, launch, focus, initiative, promotion, Tinyclues tells us who should we market that to. There are some variable spots in the email that we leverage other data for, but it's mainly target. And then also identifies if we don't have a scheduled focus for a product or launch or promotion, Tinyclues also identifies, hey, there's an opportunity, there's a group of customers here that is ready to buy brand A, product B, consider targeting them. So I hope that answers a little bit more of the question on the audience is the main factor that we're working with here. Dynamic content is more of a separate project.
Okay, no, that's great. That's really helpful. Yeah, that's great. So maybe somewhat of a segue here. There's a great question, I think, for Gabrielle, maybe to start with, and Ashley, you might want to continue it. But it says email is a great channel for customer engagement. However, it can be challenging when it comes to measuring the incremental revenue contribution of email. Some of the issues include the volume, different types of emails, promotional, transactional, informational, having a clean control group. I guess they're saying those are all challenges to be able to measure properly. So the question is, I'm curious on how your team handles the issues of email measurement beyond click rates, open rates, conversion, other digital metrics. So they've listed some of the common ones. Are there other things you look at, or how do you each look at measurement?
Absolutely. And Ashley, if you need to, obviously, please feel free to add any more details. Our analytics team, and Ashley, you can attest to this, held out a control group for, let me back up. Tinyclues identifies a target audience. We identify a target audience for email X. That's how email X is, brand A, product B, promotion C, whatever the case, the combination is. There are some audience members that are common to both. We selected that this email is going to go to Ashley, and Tinyclues also selected that it's going to go to Ashley, but Tinyclues audience has unique customers on their own, and we have some unique. We basically split the group three ways. So the common group, and then the unique universe that Tinyclues selected plus ours selected. And for each one, we held out a control group to measure incrementality for each of the three, the overlap and then the unique audiences. So we measure incrementality based on control groups, and we measure the unique audiences against each other. We are able to, based on how we're structured and the data we have, track a very high percentage of sales that are captured to our customer base, and obviously we have the contact information. So we can identify if we email customer A, if they come back and purchase e-com stores, when they purchase, what brand they purchased. So over time, we measure control group versus test group for the unique audiences plus the common. And we did this literally, I don't know exactly how much, but probably 100 times over several months. So over time, we ensured that there was consistent incremental lifts over control, and then A/B test, unique audiences against each other. I'm sure my analytics team could probably add a lot more detail, but at a high level, I agree. It is what I call a noisy channel. We're sending email, top of email, and control groups might be getting other emails, so it is not the cleanest, but over time and based on how clean the control groups were held and kept, the team was feeling very confident on the continuous results. Ashley, I'm not sure if anything else to add to that. I know there's more details in there, but
yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I'd add is just to say that majority of the people that we work with, so control groups, we see control groups held out at a strategy level. So like a total control group held out of all emails, for instance, to measure the impact of the strategy or the effectiveness of that channel over time. But then as far as testing like a methodology, like Gabriel just mentioned, we always recommend an ABC test to understand the lift between the two methodologies. Obviously, that wouldn't be an ongoing thing, and you could have it be ongoing, like maybe once in a while you add in a test, just to make sure things are still going well. But typically we see teams start with ABC tests until they have statistical significance to prove one methodology is producing more significant results or more effective results than the other one. But agreed, it's really complicated. Like Gabriel mentioned, it's super noisy also with control groups because you have other channels that you're activating on also, and there's lots to consider. And whoever asked the question, just know that every team I've ever talked to is struggling to make sure they're constantly proving, accurate results. So yeah.
Yeah, Ashley, in my experience too, I've seen where there may not be a perfect way to measure, but as long as you agree with your client, with Sally, that this is the way, and this is the way that we understand it, and we're willing to live by that kind of construct, and that becomes the perfect way, right? And you can continually improve on that.
And Bill, one other, way that I'm personally and my team is looking at is you need to see the water level rise, right? After all is said and done, you need to see a trend line of aggregate email performance, revenue and engagement rates needs to start showing a trend. So sometimes you get into the details of email A, email B. At the end of the day, if the water level doesn't rise, hey, that's right. You're losing something there. But we are seeing the water level rise. So we're in alignment with Ashley and team on how we're measuring and the performance we're seeing. I did want to say that I just replied to one question via the Q&A, and yes, we are working with our internal database. So connected to our internal customer database for all the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, regarding that question, Tinyclues is first-party customer data, so your own database. There's no third-party data coming in to inform the learning, and there's lots of reasons why we believe that's the best way to go. That I'd be happy to talk about. It's actually very interesting, but yeah, that is a really good question.
So that's a great question. If we can squeeze in time for two more questions, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. One of them was asking about zero-party data. So they're hearing the talk about first-party. Are you seeking to incorporate what we would call zero-party data, data provided willingly through different interactions by your customer base? Does that become another level for learning in the construct you have?
I wouldn't consider another level. I would consider it only will enrich the learning, right? So as long as the data is coming from your customer database, your data is tied to a specific customer, then it's only going to enrich the learning. So basically, the one thing I do want to point out is that it's really important to have the trends in your own customer database as opposed to the third-party trends influencing that, because what's going on within your product when you have a new release or you have trends happening within your customer database about your products, that's really important to making sure that the content that's going out is going to be relevant to them, because it's based on actual trends that are being detected within your customers as opposed to being informed by third-party trends with who knows, what's influencing that type of customer. So yeah.
Right. Gabrielle, anything to add to that?
Again, as a data hoarder, I want to capture, connect, get as much as from preference centers and other sources. And so the more we can connect to our customer and add to that customer golden record and provide to Ashley and other vendors, not everything will be meaningful or make it into the models or sway recommendations one way or another. But I think if you can cleanly connect it to the customer and share it and feed the AI engine or just internal predictive model work that is taking place, I think the better. So
that's great. So there's one more, and I'm sure you knew that you weren't going to get away without some question about the numbers, right? They're incredible. So people are always interested. They love numbers. So this one says, the results you're getting are incredible. I'm sure you can't disclose actual open rates, click rates, and conversions, but to get such a massive increase, how would you describe your baseline? Was it not performing as well as you hoped? Was it average? How would you characterize that? And maybe that helps us understand the growth that you've experienced.
Oh gosh, I wish I could share numbers. I directionally, I'm going to say it was healthy, but let's just say that the last 4 months of performance, and maybe oversharing here, have been record-setting months by far. So let's just say that on a healthy base, but we are setting records within our channel. That's the extent I can say without really getting to too much details.
Well, I think that answers the question, right? Healthy and setting records. That tells a pretty good story. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I just thought about this myself. You know, in the loyalty space, we talk about changing behavior. We talk about, hey, maybe creating loyalty is it's the idea, it's kind of the vision, but truly we're trying to change behavior. But what I've heard both of you talking about today is enabling preferred behavior. So it's not changing behavior, getting somebody to do something that they didn't know they wanted to do or didn't want to do, or somehow you're manipulating. And I think that's what people need to increasingly understand is with machine learning, and tell me if I'm right, this is really about uncovering sort of preferred behaviors, things people want and would like to do, and you're just working it out so that you're presenting the right things that trigger that, you know, get them to go into action. But is that a fair assessment?
I have nothing to add to that.
That was well put. It has to be obviously behaviors that are in line with, you know, with what your customer wants and needs, but obviously with a corporate, you know, goal and focus. We have categories that we may want to, you know, shine a larger spotlight on. So how do we kind of get the AI to help us uncover opportunities in those areas? And in some other areas, you know, a product that may be discontinued, you know, how do we scale down there? So yes, I think it is the preferred behavior that obviously goes in line with your corporate, you know, and your team strategy and your customer strategy. Right.
Ashley, you were going to say something?
No, actually, that's a very good point. And I think that's kind of like the paradox that we talked about of like having all that data and then not being able to leverage it to deliver that more customer-centric strategy is where we see people talking about becoming more customer-centric and then delivering exactly what the customer wants. But then the issue, there becomes a conflict almost of like, okay, well, this is what the customer wants, but my business also has like stock or overstock in this product. Like I need to find customers that are actually interested in something that my business needs in order to sustain itself. And so what Gabriel said is a great kind of like struggle that I think CRM teams kind of face on a daily basis of kind of like, okay, I want to have a relevant experience for customers, but I also need to meet some requests from my business teams, and machine learning is super helpful for solving that type of an equation.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you both. So Gabrielle Trujillo from Sally Beauty and Ashley Lively from Tinyclues, really appreciate your time being here. And it's a good discussion. It's the kind of thing I like to listen to. I mean, this was a real discussion between people that are engaging the battle, so to speak, and you're doing well with it. So it's kind of cool. And I also just want to thank CRMC. I don't know, for both of you, your experience. It was the first conference I'd been to live over the last 18 months. And so it was a good experience. I think they've put on the best retail loyalty show, in the business. And so, I mean, we're proud to be partnering with them. And I know you have, I just wanted to get a quick impression. Ashley, I know you were there. I think, Gabrielle, you participated remotely, right?
I was virtual at CRMC, unfortunately, but we'll definitely be there next year. But actually, I also, thank CRMC for the opportunity to have a virtual/live interaction on stage. So leveraging technology, and yes, absolutely. And thank you for the audience for the time. And I do look forward to connecting on LinkedIn. And if anybody has any questions, or hey, we're learning in this. And I think, I talked a lot with my peers at Network, and how do we learn together and help each other, and look forward to hearing others' experiences on this, and continuing to improve our customer experience. But yes, great opportunity. Ashley, please.
Yeah, just to reiterate, Bill, my experience at CRMC this year was It was my first time being there, and I was blown away. It was a great conference. I mean, lots of meaningful connections and discussions happening. And it's really nice to be able to share the story, but also be part of like some follow-up discussions. So agreed. Thanks to CRMC, and also like everyone who participated just to make it happen. That's a big thing. So great experience.
Great. Yeah. Well, thanks to Devin Wiley and Melissa Simpson and the whole crew there. They're really good. So
yeah.
You've been listening to Customer-Centric Strategy at Scale using machine learning, which is part of the CRMC webinar series. And we're happy to be here at the Wise Marketer hosting it. But thanks again, Ashley and Gabrielle. Thank you very, very much. And maybe we'll get you back here again in the future.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.